had a great weekend. Thanks for joining us. Browns getting ready, like the rest of the NFL world, to head to Indianapolis for the NFL Scouting Combine. A little over a week. Take a look at this. This from NFL.com's Bucky Brooks, one of their NFL experts. NFL's 8 biggest Super Bowl windows right now. Chiefs are number 1. Yeah, they're trying to three-peat. Lions 2, Ravens 3. Cowboys, 49ers 4 and 5, and the Browns listed at number 6, just ahead of the Packers and the Jets. Despite Watson's inconsistent performance, the 3-time Pro Bowler could flourish under new offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey. With the defense expected to continue its dominance, Browns have the personnel to challenge the league's heavyweights for the title if their QB1 regains his all-star form. With that, let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon, Dog Pound Daily, Network 216. Casey, that's fair, it's accurate, and you know Bucky Brooks has no reason to be anything other than objective relative to the Browns.
Yeah, and when I was looking at that list, most of those teams are on there because of their quarterback. The Browns are on there despite the proof that their quarterback's back to that level. I think it just goes to speak to the talent on the roster that the Browns have assembled. They're obviously what they can do on the defensive side of the ball, just everything all combined, that they're viewed as one of those 8 teams with a Super Bowl window that is currently open, and we don't even know what to expect out of 4 yet.
Yeah, and their guys are relatively young. It's not like there are any that are on the wrong side of 30. There's some that are approaching that big 30 number, so I get it. All right, this free agency, this from the Bleacher Report, ranking the strongest position groups for 2024 free agency. Number 1, they go edge rusher. They say the top players, Brian Burns, Danielle Hunter, Josh Allen. Now, those guys could very well get franchised. Number 2, running backs. This one's an intriguing one. Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley. We know free agent running backs generally don't get paid a whole lot. Number 3, interior defenders. Top players, Chris Jones, probably not going to make it to free agency. Justin Madubuike from the Ravens, who is really good. Christian Wilkins there as well. And number 4, wide receiver. Mike Evans, who we'll have a little bit more on in a bit. T. Higgins, Michael Pittman Jr. Those are areas that the Browns, I could see, look to add to all of those positions via free agency. So their needs kind of match up pretty well with the free agent class.
Yeah, Danielle Hunter intrigues me. He's one that I think will escape the franchise tag. They look like they're finally ready to part ways with him. That is someone I'd be highly interested in if he hits the market. Madubuike in Baltimore, tremendous pass rushing defensive tackle right there. They kind of met a stalemate. We'll see if he falls under the franchise tag. And then Michael Pittman. That's another one that if they actually let escape Indianapolis, you'd be foolish not to try to get under contract.
Yeah, we'll have a little bit more on him as well, a couple segments. All right, we mentioned Mike Evans there. So news is coming out of Tampa Bay. The Buccaneers had a soft deadline of the day to get an extension done with Evans. He turns 31 in August is the concerning part. So he's 31 in August. Both sides remain far apart. Talks continue, but it's looking like Evans is trending towards becoming a free agent, barring an unexpected change in discussions. That's from Jordan Schultz, a really good NFL national reporter. Evans is a guy that's intriguing. 31, though, that's not how this front office rolls, by and large.
Yeah, that's just it, right? I mean, he's at that precipice of that age where receivers typically don't just get worse. They fall off a cliff with production. But it's deceiving because you look at Mike Evans, and he's coming off one of his best years in the last 8 years. So it's kind of confusing. He's obviously a huge name. In my opinion, he's a bona fide Hall of Fame wide receiver. If you just look at Andre Johnson getting in this past year, I think Evans would be a shoo-in, And it's just one of those things, is the rubber meets the road. He's at that age where it's hard to offer a guy like that kind of contract. It's just puzzling for me because the Buccaneers have basically kicked the can on his contract, since his first one. It just, to me, if they're going to have a lot of dead money to not keep him, might as well let him finish his career in Tampa Bay. But Evans typically sets hard deadlines. He said he wasn't going to negotiate during the season, and they did not. So I know the Buccaneers had a soft one today. To me, it's if Evans wants to resign, I think they find a way to get that done.
And Evans is that's the kind of wide receiver I think would thrive with Deshaun Watson. Bigger body, point of attack really good, can get I mean, if you put a profile of a wide receiver together that I think would thrive in this offense with Deshaun Watson, Ken Dorsey, that would be the guy.
Yeah, and he's not a burner, but that dude is always open downfield, super vertical threat. Like you said, just tremendous at the catch point. All of his strengths line up with what this offense needs injected into it. It's just that looming age. At 31, that's a death sentence for most receivers, even if he is coming off one of the most prolific seasons he's had in several decades. Seasons.
And the guy that the Buccaneers are likely going to sign at quarterback, Baker Mayfield, wants him back. So we'll see how that. Baker knows what he likes. That wide receiver makes him better. All right, former defensive coordinator of the Browns and interim head coach Greg Williams, along with his son Blake Williams, on what the Browns need to do this offseason. This is from the Come Get Some podcast.
Number one thing is they've got to do a better job now. They've got to get some more offensive line help. Okay, they played the most different combinations of offensive linemen because of the injuries. Some of those quality reps right there will be good backup reps, but can we increase the quality, especially at the tackle positions? Okay, can we do that and get better there?
Yep, no doubt. And speaking of the offensive line, our guy Andy Dickerson, the new offensive line coach that we coached with for 4 years when he was the assistant offensive line coach with us at the Rams. And this is actually his second stint at the Browns. He was actually at the Browns back under Mangini.
So we'll dive into that a little bit. It is kind of an overlooked area of need, offensive line. Yeah, for so long you've said, well, they're set, they're great, they're one of the best in the NFL.
Yeah, and they highlighted it's the tackle position for me that is a huge area of concern, and it's just uncertainty. With you have Jed coming back on his 5th-year option, you're overpaying for Conklin, but you got this third guy who you're not paying much to, DeJuan Jones, that must see the field. There's a musical chair thing going on here. Someone's going to be left without a seat. But you also have to understand this is a highly injured offensive line. So there has to be a major addressing the depth, because with Conklin's injury history, I can't even rule out that he might even retire. That's where I'm at with him. And with Jed, he started to play well right before he got hurt, but once again the availability wasn't there, and you're playing guys off the street. They have a lot to figure out there, and offensive tackle for me is the top priority this offseason.
All right, along those lines, let's take a look at Pro Football Focus grades. And again, I'm not saying this is the be-all or the end-all. It is kind of an objective grading system of offensive linemen. And again, these are not what we're used to from Browns offensive lineman grades. Jedrick Wills, 56. Bitonio, almost 68. Posick and Teller, 72 and 7. And Teller's almost 74. Jones, 65.5. If he gets the run blocking up, that'll go up. Christian, the guy that they signed off the streets, just over 46.5. And James Hudson, 49.3. So your swing tackles and your backup tackles didn't grade out very well. Those were the guys that were playing at the end of the year.
Yeah, and the guys, some of those didn't even, weren't on the roster, and there was a lot of scrambling to get those guys ready to play. But this is a concern for me, and I'm with you. PFF isn't the be-all, end-all, but it's a useful tool. That can't be the grades. You're paying this offensive line to perform. They're paid like a top unit in the league, and they have to perform as such, or this thing doesn't go. That has to be a strength. Now, familiarity, you're used to seeing those names. You could expect bounce backs from several of those guys. I think those grades were low for Joel, to be honest with you. I thought he played better than that. But I think just looking at those grades, the strength is still the interior, and you have question marks on the outside. And you're paying some of the outside guys some money. You need to produce. So there needs to be an influx of talent. And now that we have a new offensive line coach, we'll see what kind of implementations are from a schematic standpoint to where they try to shore up some areas. If he tries to bring some of his guys with him, I think that's always something you look at when you get a new coordinator. Is they're going to look at the tape, We're going to evaluate, and they're going to have to make some decisions. And the Browns have some serious decisions to make at the tackle position specifically. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see one of the guys in the interior either shuffled around or traded or cut.
Yeah, there's a lot of money on the offensive line, and the other thing is you may ask him to do different things. You know, your guards are a little bit older and a little bit more beat up. You might ask him to do some different things on that line with a new offensive line coach. Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily Network 216, and I can step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Let's take 5. With one of these 5 Lady Luck scratch-offs from the Ohio Lottery, like this new $20 100X with its $1 million grand prize, I want to get my cut of that 76% payout.
So, good news. We're playing the largest family of scratch-offs ever. These Lady Lucks have all the fun and no complications.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily and Network 216. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yeah, hi. This is Ron from down here in Clayton, Ohio. I think we have 2 glaring problems on the Browns right now. Number 1, which everybody's been talking about anyway, is a good number 2 receiver. Moore just didn't seem to fill that spot. Maybe he's a good number 3, but I don't see him as a number 2. And the other problem is Newsome. He got diced up 2 or 3 times this year. Seems like he'll have a great game, and then he'll just look lost. You know, in the Texans game, he just got burned consistently. And I don't know if he just needs to mature a little more or what the deal is, but that seems to be, in my opinion anyway, 2 of the weak spots in a very good team. Yeah, I think if we can take care of those 2 problems right there, I think we'll be fine. And love you guys, love the Browns. Let's go, boys. Let's win one.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Casey, the number 2 wide receiver, I wouldn't argue about. I liked Elijah Moore. They need more out of him. No pun not intended. Greg Newsome's kind of an intriguing one. I think they're asking him to do some things differently. He probably needs to play a little bit better. I mean, he's a first-round pick. I can see that.
Yeah, I still wouldn't have it as my top 2 areas of concern. I would put offensive tackle over whatever's happening in the cornerback room. The cornerback room, it's puzzling just because you have your number 1 in Denzel. I can't ignore what Martin Emerson is. I think he's an eventual number 1 in this league, and to me, that's just what leaves Greg as the odd man out. You know, first round pick. There's obviously expectations that come along with that. Tomorrow actually is the beginning of the window to decide on 5th-year options. It'll be interesting to see how they navigate that with Newsome. But for me, I don't really consider it a problem. In my estimation, Newsome is a starting caliber corner in the NFL. To have that as your 3rd corner, that's not a problem. That's a luxury. Now, he is asked to do some different things. I think he wants to play on the outside just because of the talent that's in that room and where it's allocated. He's going to be asked to play that if he's here. And I think you look at someone like Cam Mitchell that you could bring in to replace Newsome if you decide to move on from Newsome through a trade. You know, so I think that's what makes them the odd man out. But as far as the number 2 receivers, for me, that's definitely what has to be the point of emphasis, is to improve the versatility of your wide receiver room and upgrade this passing game. So they definitely need to get a number 2 in there by hook or by crook. I seem to think it'll come more trade than anything else. I still think you draft someone there and just keep adding talent to that room and let the talent sort itself out. But you need to go get a proven number 2 and place him in this room and slot everyone else appropriately.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways Newsome has the talent to be a starting caliber outside cornerback, but I'm with you. Martin Emerson probably going to be opposite Denzel Ward. So I would imagine they pick up the 5th-year option just because he is a starting caliber corner, and then they figure it out from there. This is interesting as well. This is from ESPN.com. NFL overhaul tiers. So from the headed in the right direction tier, they go with the Browns. What's next? Injecting confidence in Deshaun Watson after a rocky 2 years. with Browns is job number one. Whether Ken Dorsey calls the plays is something Kevin Stefanski still needs to sort out. Will the Browns rework Nick Chubb's deal, which includes $15.8 million in salary in 2024, coming off of a knee injury? None of that salary is guaranteed. So, yes, they're going to rework it. The question is how, and what does it look like?
Yeah, that's inevitable to me. Nick Chubb is getting reworked. He's getting extended. They'll lessen the cap hit, spread it out, give void years. We've seen this. We know the routine. We know what they're going to do. But injecting confidence into Deshaun Watson to get him back up to level, I think that's got to be the emphasis for Ken Dorsey. You're coming in here, and you need to figure out ways to make him as successful as humanly possible. I think that the whole season hinges upon that. That determines what your ceiling is. We know what the floor is. You can put replacement level quarterbacks on this team, and you can still make the playoffs. And you don't want to rely on that. Though you didn't pay $230 million for that. You paid $230 million to realize your full potential, and that only happens if you get the best play out of your quarterback. So everything hinges on that. But they are headed in the right direction. This is still a young roster, plenty of talent across the board, and it's going to come down to what they can get out of Watson, and being able to provide him as many weapons as possible so that if the switch does get flipped, that this thing can really take off.
All right, so along those lines, Bleacher Report, 10 best free agents, 25 years old and younger. So that's kind of in the sweet spot. Number 10, wide receiver Gabe Davis. Isn't a complete receiver, but he's a serviceable vertical deep threat who averaged 16.7 yards per reception, scoring 27 touchdowns over the past 4 seasons. That's not bad. Number 1, they go T. Higgins. In all likelihood, Bengals will franchise tag Higgins if they decide against it. Higgins' best fit would be an offense that's going to feature him as deep threat number 1 wide receiver. He's probably going to be tagged and potentially traded. Gabe Davis, we've talked about him in the past. He's intriguing. He gets you what you need, I think.
Yeah, he's intriguing. That first sentence isn't much of a salesmanship job. He's not a complete receiver. He's a one-trick pony. Now, what he does well. He gets vertical and he scores touchdowns. That is definitely that is valuable. I don't know it's exactly what this team needs in their number 2 receiver. I think they need more of a complete receiver. I think if you go and pay money to go get a number 2 on this team, it needs to be somebody who can moonlight as a 1. As dependable as Amari's been, he has been banged up. Eventually that bill comes due and he might have to miss some games. And then in that instance, you need someone that can slot over and handle those duties. I don't think Gabe Davis is that guy. It's the market. The market's going to dictate what he's worth, and if it's worth getting him in here. But I still think if you get Gabe Davis, you need to make outside moves to complete this room. For me, if I'm going to go get a Gabe Davis and get someone who can get vertical, I look at someone like DJ Chark, who I think provides those same assets and can do more and be cheaper. I think that's what it comes down to.
All right, here's a free agent that's not on that top 25 and under list because he's 26. Michael Pittman, 26 years old, from the Indianapolis Colts. 2023 stats, had 109 catches, 1,152 yards, 513 after the catch. You see his yards per game, yards per catch rate at almost 70%, 4 touchdowns. You would think that touchdown rate would be even higher. That's the only thing that kind of jumps out. I got to believe the Colts with Shane Steichen find a way to keep him.
Yeah, for me, that'd be malpractice to not retain him with someone like Anthony Richardson to give him that security blanket. But if they're foolish enough to do it and let him walk, I'd be highly interested. And I'm with you. That touchdown rate looks like it should be higher, as does the yards per catch at only 10 yards per catch. But he's been producing no matter who the quarterback is. He was able to do that with Gardner Minshew. And that's nothing to slide against Minshew. Minshew's an excellent backup quarterback in this league. I don't believe he's a starting caliber quarterback. And you still have Pittman performing to that level. I think that if you get him in an offense with other complementary pieces like an Amari Cooper, like a David Njoku, I think you see the yards per catch go up as well as that touchdown rate.
All right, this one also from the Bleacher Report, overlooked free agents that teams must prioritize. They go with an edge rusher, Derek Barnett, potential fits, Browns and Bills. Despite the lack of pass rush production, Barnett has always been a solid run defender, should be a front-of-mind target for anyone looking to add a cheap rotational player on the edge. Browns are facing a tight cap situation, might lose Zadarius Smith in free agency, so they could make sense as a landing spot for Barnett. The national perspective that they're tight up against the cap, we've already heard Andrew Berry say they know the moves they're going to make. Barnett as an additional guy, I don't know that they do that. I think they get a number 2, and they've already got Okoronkwo, and they like Alex Smith, and you got Isaiah McGuire. I don't know that they're looking for a cheap rotational edge guy.
Yeah, if it's in that mold, you look at cheap edge, rotational edges, and he's a run defender primarily. I think you already have that in Alex Wright. I think you have that role kind of solidified. You have your rotational pass rusher in Okoronkwo. I think those roles are kind of already situated. It'll be interesting though, because Barnett spent time with Jim Schwartz in Philadelphia, so that if they do make that move, you already know that he sees a role. He sees a spot that he could help the defense. But I think you would more likely, you'd rather have Zadarius back than go that route and pick up someone like Barnett in free agency. But like I said, that familiarity with Schwartz could loom large if Schwartz believes there is a role for him on this defense.
The other thing is, I think they draft an edge rusher because they're perpetually looking for the 1A to Myles Garrett. And at some point in time, you got to develop that guy.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. I think that if that guy's available at that first pick in the second round for the Browns, I think they would gladly pull the trigger on that and stop this rental process that they seem to be perpetually stuck in, trying to find that running mate for Myles Garrett.
Casey Kinnamon, Dog Pound Daily, Network 216, and I going to step aside, take another time out. Other side of the break, back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily, Network 216. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
The draft class, and I think I found a sleeper, a wide receiver that we could possibly get from USC, Taj Washington. He's very, very twitchy. He's good on one-on-one, and he even balled out at the Shrine Bowl, and he always moves the sticks. I think that we should draft this guy. He's very, very slept on. We just need the depth piece, and I think he'll be a great depth piece in this wide receiver core. I think he can learn a lot from Amari Cooper. I think we should also get a big body wide receiver, just to have balance in the offense and in the wide receiver room, just so that way we can be more explosive and be more unpredictable from a defensive perspective.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Casey, he's a guy that played with Caleb Williams, saw him a lot. He is twitchy, 5'9", and a little undersized, concerns. He's a lot more like, and Elijah Moore is bigger than him, as a thicker body. The size concerns me with Washington.
Absolutely. I mean, he's an outside receiver at 5'9", 177 pounds, and he's not really a field stretcher. I think if you're going to have those dimensions, that better be part of your game at the next level. He's more of a possession type guy. He will fill a role. I don't see it being on this team. I don't see an actual fit there. When I'm looking at the receivers in this class, I don't know if I have Washington in my top 30 receivers. It's a very strong wide receiver class, but I think we're going to be able to say that year in and year out just because of the way the game's evolved. And the 7-on-7s these kids play in high school, they're much more developed by the time they get to college. So these are deep wide receiver classes. I don't know what I would see Washington's fit on this team, because if I'm going to have a receiver of that size play on the outside, I would just make it Elijah Moore, who can stretch the field.
Yeah, and inside you've got David Bell, who they seem to like and they see him developing. I'm with him though. Big body, give me a big body guy that can stretch. I'm going back to the lab and I'm going to find the perfect wide receiver for him. So, This one from PFF.com. One free agent NFL teams can't afford to lose. For the Browns, they say Zadarius Smith. Smith's 90.1 pass rush grade over the past 2 seasons ranks 7th among edge defenders. 16.6 pressure rate ranks 9th. Getting up there in age, but he really seemed to fit along that line, and especially with Myles Garrett. I know his sack numbers weren't what you want him to be. Unless it breaks the bank, I think they go back and bring him back.
Yeah, interesting to see what he's going to command in the free agent market, because we know he's not going to sign quickly. He's one of those guys that'll marinate, kind of let the market dictate. But yeah, I'm with you, man. I know a lot of people go straight to sacks and they'll be like, well, he underperformed. My man played his role to a T. You know, he was out there being an enforcer on the edge, setting the edge, and pressuring quarterbacks. He fit really well in the locker room too. He was definitely a personality that was a welcome piece to that defensive line room. He definitely felt like a fit to me. But for me, it all comes down to the money. You know, I think that's where it slots for him, because he signed a 1-year deal last year with void on the back end. And if they can get him under something that's comparable, you know, if you're looking at that $8 million range, you know, if you can get him for another season, I think you do that. But I don't think you let that stop you from going and drafting a guy, if he falls to you in the draft, that can eventually be that permanent replacement for Zadarius Smith.
Yeah, what we have seen is they're two. The way, and tell me if you agree with this, Andrew Berry operates completely different in free agency from the draft. I mean, he drafted Martin Emerson, and he drafted an offensive tackle because he saw them as people that could eventually be starters. They started a little bit earlier than you thought, but it wasn't like, well, we're going to plug them right in and play them.
Yeah, he doesn't draft for need, he drafts for value. And with an eye down the line, that's what you have to do. You know, and he operates different with the players he trades for, which was what Zadarius was, you know. So I think that when you look at the avenues which the Browns look to bolster this team, you know, if they see a high-value guy who might not even be in their mind to play right away, they'll pull the trigger on that in the draft just to get him in the room and develop him. And like you said, they might get thrust into duty sooner, but if they can, they'll develop and let him sit a little longer, which was the plan for a guy like Alex Wright. I think he was drafted much in the same mold as Emerson or DeWan. You know, they were looking at a guy who was raw, but they just saw the opportunity and they went ahead and they took it. And now we're seeing it kind of pay off. Alex Wright stepped up in the latter half of the year and proved that he can be a solid rotational piece. But don't rule out the fact that he may be your starter eventually if he just takes another step. But he was a developmental draft pick. And then they went ahead and traded for Zadarius, a guy who was ready, plug and play right now.
All right. I know you are a Brandon Ayuk fan from the 49ers. So this one from Jack Duffin, the Orange and Brown Report. To acquire Ayuk, the two most obvious routes to create the level of cash needed from non-guaranteed contracts. Number one would be Cooper leaving. Number two, Teller and Chubb leaving. I'm not saying those are the only routes, but those are the most likely scenarios. That might be. I don't necessarily. They have so many things with contracts that they can do and will likely do. I think that is still an avenue if they decide we can go get Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, Jack, I feel attacked. I feel like I was one of the guys banging the table for that. But yeah, no, I expect Cooper's contract to get reworked either way, regardless of if they decide to go pursue someone like Brandon Ayuk. I do think that Cooper is a prime candidate to be restructured to lower his cap hit, which I regardless of how this plays out, I think that's the eventuality. And the Teller and Chubb combo, that would hurt, you know, to see that happen. But I think it's inevitability that Chubb gets reworked. Teller is someone that even if they cut, I don't believe they save a ton of money. I don't think that he's a high a cap hit this year. But you know, Jack's right. Jack's a very sharp analyst too. Like he's able to look at the contracts and even predict what the contracts are going to be before they announce them. So there's definitely validity to it. But I'm with you. There's way things can be reworked. And I think if they've seen an opportunity to acquire a talent like Brandon Ayuk, I think they make those contracts work.
Yeah, and again, I would expect Chubb's contract to be negotiated down, Cooper's, Watson's. You know, there are a number of them that they'll go to work on. All right, before we go to break, this from Dog Pound Daily. 4 Browns we can call busts after the 2023 season. Number 4, they go with Marquise Goodwin. Number 3, Jacob Phillips. Linebacker number 2, Jedrick Wills. And number 1, Siaka Ika. Now, Goodwin had the blood clots in his lungs early. Just could never. And then he was banged up all year. Phillips hasn't been able to stay on the field in his tenure. So those are injury related, but you would expect more from those guys. I think bust, I don't know, but yeah, you expect more.
Yeah, Goodwin, it was an experiment. I think you can call it a failed experiment, and it was started off rough because of the blood clots. But even after they were able to get on the field, they never really got anything out of Goodwin that merits like what you thought you were getting during the spring. I was highly excited about it. You start seeing them connecting in those spring practices, and it just never came to fruition. And I think that is a position you could replace fairly easily. Another experiment to bring in. Eventually, you hope one takes. Jacob Phillips, when the kid's flashed ability, but the availability's never been there. I think that's something you just have to walk away from. I think you could safely call that experiment a bust. The Jedrick Wills one, man, that's puzzling because he was objectively bad to start the year in a time where he couldn't be. He had a lot of money to make last year, but he started to play better, and then he got injured. It's almost like the Deshaun Watson thing. Just when you started to see the light come on and he was playing better, even with the effort stuff, getting to the second level, and then the injury happens and it deflates all the progress he made in that 4-game span before he got hurt. The Siaka Ika one, that's tough. You drafted him in the 3rd round. That's someone you thought was going to be a starter the day they drafted him just because of how thin that room was. You reworked the entire room to the point where he can't even see the field. He's a healthy scratch basically all season long. And then when you did finally get to see him in that final game, very lackluster effort, just getting pushed around, not being the guy that you thought you were going to get. And I still can't call him a bust. It's still way too early for me to say he's a bust. But I think if you draft someone that high, you expect some level of contribution, and you simply didn't get it out of it as a rookie.
Yeah, you need to see a significant step forward in year 2 from Siaka Ika without question. All right, Casey Kinnamon and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. When we return, 3 reasons to think the Browns can build on their success from a year ago. Sports4CLE, I'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dog Pound Daily and Network 216. This from A to Z Sports. 3 reasons the Browns will be able to build on their success from 2023. Nick Chubb and Deshaun Watson will return is number 1. Chubb was lost in week 2. Watson only played 5 games and a couple of drives for the Browns a season ago. Year 2 under Jim Schwartz as the defensive coordinator. You would expect the defense that was really good takes even a step forward. And number 3, the Browns have the ammo to get better. And Andrew Berry has said that they know what they're going to do restructuring wise, so they can be players, maybe not huge players, but players in the upcoming free agency. Those all make sense, and I think the most important thing to remember, defense should be better. And the detractors will say they didn't play a lot of elite quarterbacks, so that will be a challenge. There are some pretty good quarterbacks that the Browns will be facing coming up in 2024?
Yeah, it's a scary proposition. You know, the defense still can get better. It'd be interesting to see what kind of schematic changes are made under Schwartz in year 2, or if they just try to, get more aggressive. We're talking about a team who pretty much stayed in 2 or 3 coverages all year. Didn't really show much differing looks to opposing defenses. They just knew what they did, and they had the guys to pull it off. They lined up and they got it done. But eventually, you saw some pivots that needed to be made, and they weren't there. Not a lot of changes that happened throughout the game. I think that's something that needs to be looked at on the defensive side of the ball. But if this defense shows up better than they were last year, that's a scary proposition for opposing offenses. I think everything hinges on point number 1, though. Deshaun Watson and Nick Chubb returning. I think that decides how far this team can actually go. And if Nick Chubb is 90% of what Nick Chubb was, that's good enough for him to get it done. But it comes down to Deshaun Watson. I think everything we're going to talk about this whole offseason comes down to Deshaun Watson when you get down to brass tacks. If he can elevate his game and get the most of the playmakers around him, sky's the limit for this team.
So this is an interesting question. Who's under more pressure for the Browns next season? Ken Dorsey, Kevin Stefanski, or Deshaun Watson?
It's Deshaun Watson. It's got to be Deshaun Watson.
Yep.
He just had to sit there and watch what this team was able to do without him. How much pressure does that put on you? Like to think that you're the signal caller, you're QB1. You go down, and this team doesn't just survive; it thrived at the end of the year. To me, that puts all the pressure on him. He knows that he's the one that needs to perform. This team showed what it could do without him, and they were still a playoff team. A playoff team who was able to rest the final week of the season because they already clinched a spot. The pressure's on you now. The pressure's on you to get this thing, to realize your ceiling, to realize your full potential. So for me, all the pressure's on Deshaun Watson this year.
Kevin Stefanski's won 2 Coach of the Year awards in 4 seasons, and Andrew Berry has done a nice job in building around. I think both of those guys are around. But to your point, though, if you're Deshaun Watson, let's go. You want that because the pieces are there. If you come in and play like you're capable of, this team is a serious threat in the AFC.
Yeah, and that he can't point fingers. He can't be like, oh, the coach isn't getting it done, or I don't have the playmakers. Now the pieces are there. The proof's in the pudding. You're, like you said, 2 Coach of the Year awards in 4 seasons for Stefanski. I don't think that they're going to be able to turn the gun on him and be like, well, the head coach is holding them back. That's not it, man. It's up to him to perform, and he gets that opportunity. Like that's the best thing he can ask for, is to have that opportunity to do it with the best possible team he's ever played with, and to raise his stock along with the team. I think that's an opportunity that Watson can ask for at this point.
All right, so this from CBSSports.com. Free agent quarterbacks, projected contracts, and best team fits. All right, Joe Flacco. They say projected annual average value, $4 to $5 million. Best team fits: Browns, Chargers, Jets, Patriots. Stationary chuck it and pray approach should permit him at least one more run as veteran number 2. I think he may get a bridge as veteran number 1, but we'll see. Jacoby Brissett, average projected annual value $5 to $10 million. Best team fits: Browns, Cardinals, Jets, Patriots. Adaptability across different systems makes him a reliable plug-and-play vet for any club needing a number 2. Both those are accurate. I still think Joe Flacco will probably get a shot at being number 1 just based on how he played for the Browns a season ago.
Yeah, one of the projected teams they had him as a fit for was the Patriots. If he goes to the Patriots, he's not going there just to be the backup. He would at least get to compete, you would think, But if you stay with the Browns, you're not going to get the chance to compete because their quarterback, the QB1's already spoken for. So you'd have to come back here to be the backup. And I don't know if all the offensive changes they plan on making as far as schematic, I don't know if the Flacco would be a fit then. If they're really trying to get shotgun RPO heavy and have that be their system, I don't know. If you have Flacco there, you're just saying that, well, if all else fails, we'll just go back to what we've always done. And I don't think that can be the answer. I think Jacoby would be a better fit. You're trying to change the offense because he's more multiple than Flacco. Flacco's a drop back, huck it and chuck it. He'll turn us back to the defense, play action fake, and let her rip. If they're trying to change the offense to be more shotgun oriented and run out of the RPO, I just don't think that Flacco's a fit for that.
Yeah, I would. The teams I would look out for with Flacco would be the Raiders in the event they take a quarterback early and you have Aiden O'Connell. Falcons, guys where you're not getting the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks. You're getting the 4th, 5th, or 6th quarterback in the draft, and you just need You need to give him some time. Flacco buys you some time, I think, is what he does.
Well, he feels like a Raider to me. You said it. That's big, strong arm cannon guy. I think it's Gary Collins. We've seen this play out before. I think you could very easily picture Flacco in the silver and black.
Casey Kinnamon, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Hey, anytime, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out, Dog Pound Daily, as well as Network 216. We're going to take a quick time out, step aside. On the other side of the break, we turn our attention to the Cavs. Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter from the Playing Dealer, cleveland.com. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Here comes the rush.
All right, everybody, let's take 5. With one of these 5 Lady Luck scratch-offs from the Ohio Lottery.
Like the $10 Lady Luck 50X. It's got prizes all the way up to 500 grand, so you could really clean up.
The Lady Luck family of scratch-offs is the Ohio Lottery's first ever, with 5 price points from $1 to 20. They're an easy way to cook up some fun.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We turn our attention to the Cleveland Cavaliers, NBA. On the All-Star break, Eastern Conference scored over 200 points in the game against the West. Let's talk about the Cavs, though. This from the Ringer. This, according to an executive on an Eastern Conference team, there's no doubt he's leaving once his contract ends. That's about Donovan Mitchell from the Ringer. We also have heard from Chris Fedor, the Wine and Gold Talk podcast, talked about some interesting things going on with Donovan Mitchell's commitment to the Cavaliers. Let's welcome in Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter from the Playing Dealer, cleveland.com. Chris, I know you talked about it on the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. Take us through that whole situation. And, you know, from the outside, everybody's saying, oh, Mitchell's gone. It doesn't sound like that's the case, at least internally.
Look, Dave, nobody knows what Donovan Mitchell is going to do beyond this year. I think a big part of his decision when it comes to his future and where he's going to latch on is going to be tied to what the Cavs do in the postseason this year, because I've had numerous conversations with Donovan Mitchell about what drives him in the NBA, what matters to him. And yeah, maybe there's part of him that always just wants to play in New York. That's something that he envisions for his career. He hasn't expressed that publicly, but maybe deep down, that's something that he's thinking about. but that's later on down the road. Right now, it's about winning championships. And for him, he has a nasty reputation here of a guy who cannot get out of the second round of the playoffs, despite the fact that he's led every single team that he's been on for every single year that he's been in the NBA to the playoffs. He has never gotten past the second round of the playoffs. And this is a guy who's playing at an MVP level. He believes he's in the prime of his career, and he believes that he's ready to compete for championships. So I think the question surrounding the Cavs is, are the guys that he's going to be committing to, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, and some of the other younger players, is there a level of readiness from them to compete for championships? And if Donovan determines that, all of those guys are ready to compete at the same level that he's ready to compete at, then it's going to be really, really difficult for him to look around the NBA and find a better basketball situation than right here in Cleveland, where he knows it works with him and Darius Garland, right? He knows that this group won 51 games last year. He knows their conference right now, a legitimate championship contending team, a team that is right there in the mix with Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Boston, New York, and any other team that you want to throw out there in the Eastern Conference. And I think we can admit that Boston's on a different level, but the Cavs are on the second tier of teams in the Eastern Conference. That's a really, really good place to be. So unless Donovan finds something that has the same kind of basketball setup as what's here in Cleveland, I find it hard to believe that he's just going to be like, you know what? I'm just going to up and go to Brooklyn because it's New York. You know what I mean? Like maybe the Los Angeles Lakers give him a better shot to compete for a championship because there's a level of readiness and maturity on that roster than what exists here in Cleveland. But I just don't think that the Cavs or Donovan or anybody like that is in any hurry to figure out what his future is going to be beyond this year until the Cavs go through a playoff series or two and see what this all looks like.
Does he appear to be happy? Does he appear to like Cleveland from what you can tell? You're in the locker room as much as anybody.
Look, everybody can sit here and say, well, he's just saying all the right things, but the things that he's saying are backed up by actions. And since he came here, Dave, like this was a guy who learned on a Miami Beach golf course that he wasn't going to New York. Like for all of the speculation, all of the trade rumors linking him to the New York Knicks last September, he learned that he was not going to the New York Knicks and he was going to the Cleveland Cavaliers instead. And his response to hearing that news was running around with joy and thinking about playing alongside Darius Garland and thinking about the future of the Cavs. So it's not somebody who was like, oh man, I didn't get traded to New York. It was, all right, let's see what we got here in Cleveland. And then they win 51 games last year, and he has a great year for them. He starts for the Eastern Conference in the All-Star game. And then this year, this summer, he helped recruit Max Strus. He helped recruit George Niang. He helped recruit Ty Jerome in free agency. And then he set up multiple player-organized team get-togethers in the offseason, one of those in Connecticut where he lives, so that he could get all of the guys together ahead of the season so that they could take off in training camp, so that they could build camaraderie. So this is a guy who has acted happy, said that he's been happy, said that he believes in the direction of the organization and his teammates, and he has backed that up every step of the way. The only thing that he hasn't done to fully commit to this organization is sign the contract extension this past offseason, which didn't make financial sense for him to do that. He is happy here. He says to everybody that is willing to listen, I am happy here. I believe in this group that we have here. And there's no reason for him to be unhappy. This is one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference.
Legitimate you mentioned Boston, and they're out ahead of everybody. Legitimate contenders, though, behind that, the Cavs. And what do you think their glaring weaknesses as you look forward to the playoffs?
I think it's kind of what I talked about, Dave. It's just questions about how ready is JB Bickerstaff as a tactician for a 7-game series against a really, really good coach on the opposite sidelines. How much did he learn from being outcoached by Tom Thibodeau in the first-round playoff series against the New York Knicks. Now that he has more chess pieces and ones that can move in a different kind of way, will he be better in that kind of environment when it comes to in-game adjustments, when it comes to game-to-game adjustments, when it comes to lineup decisions and strategy things? Is Darius Garland, does he have a maturity to his game that is demanded in the postseason? Because the things that he sometimes can get away with in the regular season, doesn't happen in the playoffs. It's a completely different game. Evan Mobley, is he physical enough? Is he strong enough? Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley together, can they hold up against, playoff physicality when referees tend to swallow the whistle and allow things to go in a different kind of way, something that they felt last year with the Knicks. So I don't know that there's like one position that is a glaring weakness or one skill set that's missing from this roster. I think it's just, how is this team going to respond after everything that happened in the playoffs? And are they more than just a really, really talented team that can bank wins in the regular season? I need to see everything that they have done this year on the heels of last year translate into the postseason. Those are the questions that I have.
All right, before we take a quick break, who do you think they might be looking at in the buyout market, if anybody, or I mean, it's a pretty deep team. Are they looking at anybody in the buyout market?
That's the problem that they're running into, Dave, is that, when they're having these conversations with these free agents in the buyout market, the guys that actually have, other options and other destinations in mind, Danilo Gallinari, for example, he is all but agreed to a deal with the Milwaukee Bucks. The Cavs talked to Gallinari, makes sense, right? He can space the floor. He gives them an insurance policy, a depth piece behind George Niang and Dean Wade. And it would make sense for him to come in and fill that kind of role. But, the Cavs were saying, we don't know what your playing time is going to be like. We don't know how consistent your role is going to be. We can't guarantee that you're going to be in our nightly rotation. So that's a tougher sell for guys that have other options. And that's the situation that the Cavs are in. Dave, they're having a hard enough time getting minutes for Craig Porter Jr. and Sam Merrill and finding enough minutes for Dean Wade consistently. So a lot of these guys, they want a consistent role. They want to know when their minutes are going to come, if their minutes are going to come. So I think the Cavs are going to be better off looking at that next tier of available buyout type guys. Joe Harris, somebody who has experience playing here in Cleveland. I think he would come here. He would accept the role of, some nights I'm going to play, other nights I'm not going to play. Who knows where my shots are going to come from, but I'll just be there in case. Seth Curry, if he gets bought out from the Charlotte Hornets. Davis Bertans, if he gets bought out from the Charlotte Hornets. Like, those are the kinds of guys that the Cavs are going to be looking for, because really they're just looking for an 11th or 12th guy that gives them a little bit of comfort and insurance in case something happens in terms of injury, or if one of these guys goes into a shooting funk at the wrong time, or if one of these guys becomes unplayable in a playoff series because of a specific matchup.
Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick timeout. We will continue talking Cavs on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
With one of these 5 Lady Luck scratch-offs from the Ohio Lottery.
Like the $5 25X. It's a nice way to nab up to 150 grand.
The Lady Luck family of scratch-offs is the Ohio Lottery's first ever, with 5 price points from $1 to 20. They're an easy way to break into some fun.
We continue talking Cavs with Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Brian Windhorst, ESPN national columnist, talking about the short-term and long-term view of the Cavs moving forward. This from ESPN's NBA Countdown.
They're 16-2. J.D. Bickerstaff is a chance for Coach of the Year. Donovan Mitchell's probably going to make the All-NBA team again. Jarrett Allen should be on the All-Defensive team. They've played awesome. That's great. Then you look a little bit farther and you see what the real challenge is tonight and going forward, which is Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley sharing the court together. They are extremely talented. Both are playing well, but they just aren't effective because the Cavs can't spread the floor. When they've played together this year, the Cavs have outscored opponents by 38 points. That's really good. When Jared Allen has played with Dean Wade, who was the replacement starter while Mobley was out with a knee injury, almost plus 200. They don't work well together and as well as they need to, and that is an issue. Because the third layer is that this summer, yes, you've got the Donovan Mitchell contract. That's a big thing for the franchise. But also Evan Mobley and Jared Allen are contract extension eligible. And you've got to figure out, if you're the Cavs, if they're going to work together, if you're going to give them 9-figure extensions.
Whew, look, that right there, you working it. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if the Cavs make it to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Chris, those are all I'd say about Evan Mobley. He's, 22 years old and coming off an injury. His game today isn't going to be the same it is next year, even come playoff time. But you hear at the end, would you be surprised if they make it to the Eastern Conference Finals? I mean, they're in the 2 seed.
Well, Dave, I think it depends on matchups. I think this is a team that where they go, how far they go, is going to depend on what seed they get and who they face up with in the first round of the playoffs, then the second round of the playoffs, and ultimately, if they can get to the conference finals, I think it's going to be dependent on the path that they have to take in order to get there. And I'll say this, being in the 2 seed, theoretically, should be advantageous for this team. Because if you think about it, coming into this year, there was so much conversation about, okay, whoever you had in whatever order, it was Boston, Milwaukee, and Philadelphia, the top 3 seeds in the Eastern Conference. Write that in pen. Oops, that hasn't been the case. In saying that, because you had that feeling coming into the year, you were thinking, okay, Cavs in the 4, 5, or 6. So that means maybe a collision course with New York in the first round of the playoffs, maybe a matchup with the Indiana Pacers in the first round of the playoffs. Whatever the case may be, you felt like that first round matchup was going to be a little bit more challenging from the Cavs' perspective, right? And now you've got a situation where they're the 2 seed and they would be playing the 7 seed in the East. Theoretically, that's a better matchup for them. And being in the 2 seed also means avoiding playing the Boston Celtics potentially until the conference finals. It's a good spot here to potentially make a deep run if they can hang on to the 2 seed. I think everybody in the East, if they want to compete for a championship and represent the East in the NBA Finals, the best path is going to be avoid playing against the Boston Celtics for as long as you possibly can. And right now, as it stands, the Cavs would avoid doing that until the conference finals.
The part that we heard about Allen and Mobley together, Mobley's game is evolving. It needs to evolve to where they get a little bit better in that point differential on the court. Correct?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And there are complications for JB Bickerstaff when it comes to deciding what to do in end-of-game situations this year that just did not exist last year, Dave. If you think about it, just look at how JB has been handling the minutes between both bigs since Evan Mobley came back. Now, yeah, part of it is that Evan is on a minute restriction, and JB has to be cognizant of that. The other part of it is Tristan Thompson is still on a suspension, so Evan Mobley is technically both the starting power forward and the backup center, and that requires JB to stagger Jarrett and Evan, break up their minutes a little bit more throughout the course of the game. But I think that's something that JB wants to do anyway. I think the best offensively, Dave, when they've got 4 shooters around Evan Mobley, who has evolved as a shooter. He's shooting it with more confidence. He's got more arc on his outside shot. He's made more threes since coming back from this injury than he did all of the first half of the season before he got injured. But his game is still primarily predicated inside, and there are spacing issues that come with playing Jared Allen and Evan Mobley together that just don't exist when the 4-man is either George Niang or Dean Wade or Max Strus in a small ball lineup or something along those lines. So because JB has a few more options to go to get a little bit of an offensive boost by splitting those 2 guys up, it's something that he's going to have to consider, especially in end-of-game situations. Now, obviously, the the reason why you have Evan and Jarrett together is because they're so dominant on the defensive end of the floor, and the Cavs are so elite with both of the guys out there together. But if they can gain something offensively while at the same time not taking a drastic step back defensively, then it's something I think JB is going to continue to explore.
All right, before I let you go, you wrote an article about teams challenging the Cavs' toughness. They refuse to back down, and they continue to change that misconception. Niang and Strus, if you dropped them on this team in the playoffs, that's a different series against the Knicks. I mean, relative to shooting and anything, those are just two guys that don't – if you're playing against them, it's going to be a long night for you.
The three guys that have the most playoff experience on this roster, Dave, are Tristan Thompson, George Niang, and Max Strus. All three guys that were not here for the first-round matchup against the Knicks. So beyond the fact that the Cavs recognized, hey, we need to boost our bench. Hey, we need to get better as a defensive rebounding team. We got to find some more floor spacing and some more shooting. They looked at it and said, we got to find some more playoff-level toughness. We got to find some more playoff level know-how. We've got to find some experienced guys that can help our young guys in those kinds of situations. And yeah, Max Strus on the court, everything that he brings to the table, that speaks for itself. Same thing when it comes to Niang. Tristan on the court has been better, but like that experience is something that is going to be valuable for the Cavs. I don't know when it's going to show up. I don't know how it's going to show up in a playoff series, but you're going to see it. You're going to feel it. And having guys like George Niang and Max Strus and Tristan Thompson that have been there, they know what it feels like. They know what it looks like. They know the edginess that they need to play to in a playoff series. Like that's all stuff that is going to, you would think, be different for the Cavs in their first round playoff series against whoever it's going to be.
Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter from Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. As always, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much. Thanks, Chris.
You got it, Dave. Anytime, man.
Chris Fedor, make sure you're checking it out. Always great Cavs coverage for the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at